The bitter cold of the Montana winter night cut through Olivia Landon's threadbare coat as she stumbled across the snow-covered ground toward the only shelter in sight, a weathered barn standing alone on the vast prairie. Her fingers had long since gone numb, her breath escaping in clouds that dissipated into the moonlit darkness of 1875. The ranch house beyond was dark, no sign of inhabitants, but Olivia had no choice. Another night in the elements would surely be her death. The barn door creaked as she pushed it open, the rusty hinges protesting against the intrusion. Inside, the air was still cold but mercifully free from the wind that had pursued her relentlessly for miles. Hay was scattered about, and the scent of horses lingered, though none were present now. Olivia collapsed onto a pile of straw in the corner, pulling her coat tighter around her slender frame. Only 22 years old, and she had already lost everything. Her family farm in Kansas seized by the bank after her father's sudden death, her mother succumbing to pneumonia just 3 months later, and her brother Thomas killed in a saloon brawl when he tried to earn money for their passage east. Now she was alone, having spent her last dollar on the stagecoach that had left her at the crossroads 10 miles back, the driver unwilling to detour to the town still another day's journey away. Exhaustion overtook her as she burrowed into the hay, her body finally giving in to the fatigue that had been her constant companion. As consciousness slipped away, Olivia wondered if anyone would find her here, or if this abandoned barn would become her final resting place. Hours later, the sound of boots on wooden planks jolted her awake. Olivia froze, fear seizing her chest as a tall figure entered the barn, a lantern held high in one gloved hand. She tried to make herself smaller, to disappear into the hay, but it was too late. "Who's there?" A deep voice called out, surprisingly gentle despite its firmness. "Show yourself. I mean no harm." Trembling, Olivia sat up, straw clinging to her dark hair and tattered dress. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice hoarse from disuse and cold. "I didn't think anyone lived here. The house was dark, and I just needed shelter for the night. I'll leave at first light." The lantern moved closer, illuminating a man's face weathered by sun and wind, but handsome, with keen blue eyes under the brim of a worn cowboy hat. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble and shoulders broad beneath a sheepskin coat. "You'll catch your death out there," he said, studying her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "It's 15 below, and a storm's coming in from the north." He set the lantern on a nearby barrel and knelt to gather some kindling from a pile near the door. "I'm Liam Ellison," he offered as he arranged the wood in a small stone circle in the center of the barn floor. "This is my place." "Olivia Landon," she replied, watching as he struck a match and carefully nurtured a small flame to life. "I didn't mean to trespass." Liam added larger sticks to the growing fire, his movements deliberate and practiced. "No trespassing if I invite you to stay." The fire caught properly now, casting a warm glow throughout the barn. He looked up at her, the firelight dancing across his features, and said simply, "This is your home now, at least until the storm passes." Olivia stared at him, unsure whether to be grateful or wary. "Why would you help a stranger?" "Out here, refusing help is as good as murder," Liam replied, removing his gloves and holding his hands toward the fire. "Nobody survives alone in Montana territory, especially not in winter." The heat from the fire gradually reached her, and Olivia edged closer, drawn by the first real warmth she had felt in days. "Thank you," she whispered. "There's food in my saddlebag," Liam said, nodding toward where he'd left his gear. "Nothing fancy jerky and hardtack, but it'll fill your belly." Hunger overcame her hesitation, and Olivia accepted the offered provisions with trembling hands. As she ate, Liam built up the fire further, then spread a blanket from his pack near the flames. "Get some sleep," he said, standing up. "I'll check on the house. Been away 3 weeks driving cattle to Fort Benton. Need to make sure nothing's frozen or broken." "You live here alone?" Olivia asked, realizing how isolated the ranch was. Liam nodded. "For years now. Lost my partner last summer snakebite. Been managing on my own since." He picked up the lantern. "Rest. We'll talk more in the morning." Before she could reply, he was gone, the barn door closing behind him with a solid thud. Olivia sat by the fire, the food in her stomach and the warmth surrounding her making her drowsy once more. Despite her uncertainty about this stranger and his unexpected kindness, she wrapped herself in the blanket he had left and surrendered to sleep, the fire crackling softly beside her. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the cracks in the barn walls. Olivia woke to find the fire reduced to embers, but a fresh blanket had been added over her while she slept. Sitting up, she discovered a bundle nearby, a woman's woolen dress, faded but clean, with thick stockings and a shawl. The barn door opened, and Liam entered, carrying a steaming cup. "Coffee," he explained, offering it to her. "House is warm now. Stove's going. Figured you might want these." He gestured to the clothes. "Belong to my sister. She left them when she married and moved to Oregon." Olivia accepted the coffee gratefully, the hot liquid bringing life back to her body. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Ellison." "Liam," he corrected. "And no thanks needed. Storm's hitting now, you'd have frozen for sure out there." He nodded toward the barn door, where the sound of howling wind was growing louder. "I'll give you privacy to change," he added. "Come to the house when you're ready. Paths just 20 yards, straight line from the door." After he left, Olivia changed quickly, grateful for the warm, clean clothes. The dress was slightly large, but infinitely better than her ruined garments. Wrapping the shawl around her shoulders, she gathered her courage and stepped outside. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet as she made her way toward the small ranch house. It was a modest structure, log walls with a stone chimney from which smoke curled into the white sky. Snow was falling heavily now, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. Inside, the house was simple but tidy. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, with a wooden table and chairs nearby. A rocking chair sat by the fire, and shelves lined another wall, filled with books, an unexpected sight in this remote place. Liam stood at a cast-iron stove, turning what smelled like flapjacks in a skillet. "Sit," he invited, nodding toward the table. "Food's almost ready." Olivia obeyed, watching as this taciturn cowboy moved efficiently around his kitchen. "How long have you had this ranch?" she asked, trying to break the silence. "Built it 6 years ago," he replied, bringing plates to the table. "Came west after the war. Couldn't go back to Tennessee, nothing left there for me." He set a plate of flapjacks before her, along with a jar of molasses. "Started with 10 acres and 6 cattle. Now I have 300 acres and 100 head. All alone." Olivia couldn't imagine managing such an operation single-handedly. "Had a partner, like I said. Sam Wilson. Good man." Liam sat across from her, his expression clouding. "Hired hands during roundup and branding. Rest of the time, it's just been me and the land." They ate in silence for a while, Olivia savoring the first real meal she'd had in days. Outside, the storm intensified, snow swirling past the windows in thick curtains. "What brings you out here alone?" Liam finally asked. "Not many women travel these parts unaccompanied." Olivia set down her fork, the memories fresh and painful. "I lost everything," she said simply, then found herself telling this stranger her entire story: the farm, her parents, her brother, the desperate journey west that had ended with her stranded and penniless. Liam listened without interruption, his blue eyes intent on her face. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "Life takes hard turns out here. Tests what you're made of." "I don't know what I'm going to do," Olivia admitted. "I was headed to Silverdale, my mother's cousin lives there. But I don't know if she'll take me in." "Silverdale's 3 days' ride in good weather," Liam said, looking toward the window where the blizzard raged. "This storm could last a week. You're welcome to stay until it passes." Olivia felt both relief and apprehension. "I wouldn't want to impose." "No imposition. Could use the company, truth be told." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Been talking to myself too much lately." That first day passed quietly, with Olivia helping to prepare a simple stew for supper while Liam tended to necessary chores, battling the elements to check on the cattle in the nearest pasture and ensure the barn was secure. By evening, they sat by the fire, the wind howling outside like a living creature seeking entry. "Read to me," Liam asked unexpectedly, gesturing toward the bookshelf. "Choose anything." Been a while since I heard a voice besides my own reading those words. Surprised, Olivia selected a volume of Tennyson's poetry, finding comfort in the familiar verses as she read aloud. Liam listened with his eyes closed, occasionally nodding in appreciation. When she paused, he opened his eyes and regarded her thoughtfully. "My mother loved poetry," he said softly. "Used to read to us children every night, even after working in the fields all day." It was the most personal thing he had shared, and Olivia sensed the significance of the memory. "Mine too," she replied. "Though father called it impractical. Said it wouldn't put food on the table." "Some things feed the soul instead of the body," Liam observed. "Need both to truly live." The days blended together as the storm showed no sign of relenting. Olivia found herself falling into a routine, with Liam helping with indoor chores, cooking meals from the stores he had laid in for winter, and sharing quiet evenings by the fire. He was a man of few words but thoughtful actions, always ensuring she was comfortable and had everything she needed. On the fourth day, as they sat shelling dried beans for supper, Olivia gathered her courage to ask the question that had been nagging at her. "When the storm passes, would you consider hiring me? As a housekeeper, perhaps? I can cook and clean, mend clothes, tend a garden when spring comes." She looked down at her hands, embarrassed by her forwardness but desperate for a solution. "I have nowhere else to go, and I'm not afraid of hard work." Liam's hands stilled, and when she dared to look up, his expression was unreadable. "This isn't much of a place for a young woman," he said carefully. "Isolated. Rough. Nearest neighbors 15 miles. Town's a full day's ride." "I grew up on a farm," Olivia countered. "I understand isolation and hard work." She hesitated. "I wouldn't expect payment beyond room and board, at least at first." He studied her for a long moment. "It wouldn't be proper," he finally said. "A single woman living with a single man would ruin your reputation." "What reputation?" Olivia laughed without humor. "I'm a penniless orphan with no prospects. Besides, who would know out here?" "People always know," Liam replied, resuming his task. "Word travels, even in the wilderness." They lapsed into silence, the only sound the soft clicking of beans falling into the wooden bowl. Finally, Liam spoke again. "When the storm breaks, I'll take you to Silverdale. If your cousin won't have you, we'll find another solution." Olivia nodded, disappointment settling in her chest. She had begun to feel safe here, in this simple house with this quiet man. The prospect of facing an uncertain future again filled her with dread. That night, as they sat by the fire, Liam unexpectedly shared stories of his time in the war fighting for the Union despite his Tennessee roots, the friends he'd lost, the horrors he'd seen that still sometimes woke him in the night. Olivia listened, understanding that he was offering a piece of himself in return for the trust she had shown him. "Is that why you came so far west?" she asked when he fell silent. "To escape those memories?" "Partly," he admitted. "Also wanted to build something that was mine alone. Something no one could take away." He poked at the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. "What about you? What did you dream of before life took those turns?" The question caught her off guard. It had been so long since anyone had asked about her dreams. "I wanted to be a teacher," she confessed. "I love books and learning. Thought maybe someday I could have a little school somewhere." Liam nodded, as if this confirmed something he had already suspected. "There's no school in Silverdale," he said. "Nearest one's in Helena. Lots of ranch families with children who get no proper learning." "It was just a girlish fancy," Olivia said, embarrassed. "I have no formal training." "You read well. Write well too, I'd wager. Might be all that's needed to start." His eyes held hers for a moment before returning to the fire. Something to consider. On the morning of the 7th day, they woke to silence. The storm had finally passed during the night. Sunlight sparkled on the pristine snow that blanketed everything in sight, transforming the landscape into a dazzling white expanse. Liam spent the day digging out paths to the barn and checking on his cattle, many of which had sought shelter in a stand of trees on the lee side of a hill. Miraculously, he had lost only 2 to the cold. Olivia watched him work from the window, admiring his strength and determination as he forged through snow drifts taller than himself. She had come to appreciate his quiet competence, his simple kindness, the depth that lay beneath his reserved exterior. The thought of leaving brought an unexpected ache to her heart. That evening, as they sat down to a supper of venison stew and cornbread, Liam cleared his throat. "Pastor Daniels comes through these parts every 6 weeks or so. Due in Silverdale next Sunday. Olivia looked up, puzzled by the sudden mention of the circuit preacher. If your cousin won't take you in, Liam continued, his eyes fixed on his plate, and if you truly want to stay here, he could marry us. Would solve the propriety issue. The spoon froze halfway to Olivia's mouth. Marry? But we barely know each other. I know, Liam agreed, finally meeting her gaze. Not a romantic proposal. More practical than anything. But I respect you, Olivia. Think we could build a good life. I'm not an educated man, but I work hard. Ranch is growing. Would never mistreat you. Stunned, Olivia set down her spoon. Are you saying this out of pity? No. Liam's response was immediate and firm. Saying it because these past days have shown me what this place could be with you in it. Been alone too long. Never thought about changing that until you arrived. Olivia's mind raced. Marriage to a man she had known for only a week was madness. Yet she had seen his character, his integrity, the gentle heart beneath his weathered exterior. And what were her alternatives? I need time to think, she said finally. Liam nodded. Of course. No rush to decide. We'll head to Silverdale when the trail's clear, probably 2 more days. You can meet your cousin, see what options you have. The next morning, Olivia woke early and slipped outside while Liam still slept. The world was transformed by the fresh snow, beautiful and serene in the dawn light. She walked to the barn, seeking solitude to sort through her thoughts. Inside, she found herself drawn to the spot where Liam had built that first fire, where he had looked at her with kindness and said, "This is your home now." Had some part of him meant it permanently even then? The sound of the door opening interrupted her reverie. Liam entered, concern evident on his face. Saw your tracks in the snow. Everything all right? Olivia nodded. Just thinking. He approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. About my proposal? Yes. She turned to face him fully. Why me, Liam? You could find a bride in town, someone you've known longer, someone with more to offer. Don't want someone from town, he replied simply. Want someone who sees beauty in poetry and doesn't mind silence. Someone strong enough to face hardship, but gentle enough to still dream. His voice softened. Someone like you. You don't even know if I can return your feelings, Olivia said, though her heart quickened at his words. No, he agreed. But I'm willing to take that chance. He gestured around the barn. Life offers few certainties. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts. Olivia studied him, the sincerity in his blue eyes, the strength in his stance, the gentleness in his expression. Something was growing between them, something tentative yet promising. Was it enough to build a life on? If I agree, she said carefully, it would be a real marriage, not just an arrangement. Liam's expression softened. Yes, a real marriage in every way, if you'll have me. The journey to Silverdale 2 days later was arduous, the trail still partially blocked by snowdrifts that forced them to find alternate routes. They traveled on horseback, Olivia riding a gentle mare Liam had trained himself, her hands secure around his waist when the terrain became too difficult for separate mounts. The small town appeared as the sun was setting, a cluster of buildings nestled in a valley with mountains rising dramatically behind it. Smoke curled from chimneys, and lamplight glowed in windows, creating a welcoming sight after the lonely landscape they had traversed. Liam secured rooms at the town's only hotel, adjoining but separate, his concern for her reputation evident. We'll find your cousin tomorrow, he promised as they parted for the night. Margaret Landon, you said? Olivia nodded, suddenly anxious about the meeting. Would her mother's cousin even remember her? Would she offer the home Olivia had journeyed so far to find? And if she did, would Olivia still want it, now that another option had presented itself? Sleep eluded her as she lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the sounds of the town, distant piano music from the saloon, occasional laughter, the howl of a dog. It was more civilization than she had experienced in weeks, yet she found herself missing the peaceful quiet of Liam's ranch and the comforting presence of the man himself. Morning brought clarity. As she dressed in the clothes Liam had provided, now laundered and mended by her own hand, Olivia realized her decision had already been made. The thought of saying goodbye to Liam filled her with an emptiness she couldn't bear. They found Margaret Landon's house easily enough, a small cottage near the church, with lace curtains in the windows and a neat garden now buried under snow. An older woman answered their knock, her face lined but kind, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Olivia," she exclaimed after introductions were made. "Goodness, child, you're the image of your mother at your age." She ushered them inside, where a cozy parlor awaited, furnished with well-worn but cared-for pieces. Over tea, Olivia explained her circumstances, carefully omitting the details of her week spent at Liam's ranch to protect both their reputations. Margaret listened with sympathy, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Of course you'll stay with me," she declared when Olivia finished. "I've been lonely since Harold passed last spring. The house is small, but we'll manage." Relief and gratitude flooded Olivia, yet she found herself glancing at Liam, who sat quietly nearby, his expression carefully neutral. "That's very kind," she said to Margaret, "but I need to consider all my options." Margaret's gaze moved between them, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I see," she said softly. "Perhaps you two need a moment to talk privately." When they were alone, Liam turned to Olivia. "You have a place here," he said. "A chance for the life you dreamed, maybe even teaching, in time. Don't feel obligated to my offer." Olivia stepped closer to him, suddenly sure of her heart. "What if it's not obligation I feel?" His eyes widened slightly. "Olivia, when I first arrived at your ranch, I was lost in every sense of the word," she said. "You gave me shelter without question, shared your home, treated me with respect." She took his hand, feeling the calluses that spoke of years of hard work. "In 1 week, you showed me more kindness than most people show in a lifetime." "Kindness isn't love," Liam reminded her gently. "Don't confuse the two." "I'm not," Olivia insisted. "But kindness can be the foundation for something deeper. I've seen your heart, Liam. I've watched how you care for your animals, how you respect the land, how you treasure books and poetry despite calling yourself uneducated." She smiled. "I've seen enough to know I want to learn the rest." Hope flickered in his eyes. "You're choosing to come back with me?" "If Pastor Daniels is still willing to perform a ceremony on Sunday," she confirmed. Liam's face transformed with a smile that took her breath away. "He'll be willing," he assured her. Margaret returned to find them standing close together, their hands entwined. Her knowing smile suggested she had anticipated this outcome. "Well then," she said briskly, "I believe congratulations are in order." The next 3 days passed in a whirl of preparations. Margaret insisted on hosting a proper wedding, small though it would be. Word spread through the tight-knit community, and soon offers of assistance arrived: flowers from the general store owner's hothouse, a cake from the hotel restaurant, music from the schoolmaster who played fiddle. On Sunday morning, Olivia stood in Margaret's bedroom, dressed in a simple white gown that her cousin had altered from her own wedding dress. "You look beautiful," Margaret said, arranging a wreath of evergreen and dried berries on Olivia's dark hair. "Your mother would be so proud." "Do you think I'm being foolish?" Olivia asked, suddenly nervous. "Marrying a man I've known so briefly?" Margaret squeezed her hands. "I knew Harold for 3 weeks before we wed," she confessed. 42 years we had together, and I never regretted a day. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind hasn't figured out yet." The ceremony in the small white church was attended by 20 of Silverdale's residents, all curious about the rancher and the young woman who had arrived so suddenly in their midst. Pastor Daniels spoke of faith and commitment, of building a life together through good times and hardship alike. When Liam took her hands to recite his vows, Olivia saw emotion in his eyes that he usually kept carefully hidden. "I, Liam, take you, Olivia, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice steady despite the feeling behind it. "To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." As Olivia repeated the same words, she felt the rightness of her decision settle deep in her soul. This man, this quiet, honorable cowboy, had offered her not just shelter but a future, not just kindness but the promise of love. "You may kiss the bride," Pastor Daniels announced, and Liam leaned down, his lips meeting hers for the first time in a gentle kiss that held both tenderness and promise. The small congregation applauded, and Olivia felt herself blush as they parted. They left Silverdale the following day, Margaret tearfully extracting promises of visits when the weather permitted. The journey back to the ranch seemed shorter somehow, filled with quiet conversation and comfortable silences. Liam spoke of his plans for spring planting, for expanding the cattle herd, for adding a room to the house. Maybe for a nursery, he suggested, a question in his voice. Someday, when you're ready. Olivia smiled, imagining children with Liam's blue eyes running across the prairie. I'd like that, she said. But first, perhaps we could build a small schoolhouse. For the children from neighboring ranches. Already thought of that, Liam admitted. That clearing near the creek would be perfect. Close enough for you to walk to, far enough to give us privacy. As the ranch came into view, Olivia felt a surge of emotion. This remote place that had once been merely a desperate shelter had become so much more. It had become home. And the man beside her, who had once been a stranger offering kindness, had become the center of her world. Liam helped her down from her horse when they reached the yard, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. Tradition, he explained with a small smile as he carried her toward the house. A man's supposed to carry his bride over the threshold. Inside, he set her on her feet but kept his arms around her. Welcome home, Mrs. Ellison, he said softly, his voice carrying a depth of feeling that made her heart race. Home, Olivia repeated, remembering that first night in the barn when he had built a fire and spoken those same words. This is your home now. How right he had been. Liam lowered his head to kiss her, and this time there was no audience, no restraint, just the promise of their future unfolding before them like the vast Montana sky, endless with possibility. As his arms tightened around her, Olivia knew that the journey that had begun in loss and desperation had led her exactly where she was meant to be, in this house, on this land, with this man who had offered her shelter and found his own heart's home in return. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft flakes drifting past the windows. But inside, warmth and love kept the cold at bay, a fire that would burn through all the seasons of their lives together.